Welcome to Austin Eras, the podcast that unravels Austin's transformation into a 21st century boomtown and explores its potential future. Brought to you by Collective Advisors, Austin Eras takes you on a journey through the city's evolving landscape and rich history, offering insights into its dynamic past, present, and future.
Welcome to the Austin Eras podcast. I'm your host, Adam Flagg, and today's guest is someone whose work has touched nearly every corner of Austin's civic life. Kristin Marcum is the president and owner of ECPR Texas, a public relations firm that has shaped the stories of this city for the past 30 years. She started as an intern in 1998, earning just enough to stay in the city she fell in love with while driving down 360. In 2022, she bought the company and now leads a team of 25 with a deep commitment to storytelling, transparency, and impact. From coordinating Lady Bird Johnson's funeral coverage to managing the Civil Rights Summit at the LBJ Presidential Library, where all living presidents attended, to launching iconic projects like the JW Marriott and Q2 Stadium, Kristin has been a trusted architect behind the scenes. She's also the chair of the United Way for the Greater Austin Board, as well as many other boards, an advocate for equity and Austin's growth, and a believer in mentorship, community service, and building a city where everyone belongs. Welcome, Kristin Marcum.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming out. I think this is a really exciting time to be able to meet with you because you've been so involved in the city. You've done so many things, both professionally as well as where you're giving your personal time as well. And I think that the story that you have to tell is an exciting one for our listeners. So thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure. And I love talking to you because I think we have something in common. We both did not grow up in Austin, but we came here and felt like it was really welcoming and owe a lot to Austin for all that it's given us.
Yeah. I mean, I've been here for 18 years.
Yep.
You moved here in 1998.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about how it all got started. Where were you born? Where did you come from?
Sure. I am from an area of Houston called Alief. It's southwest Houston, and I came up to this area to what was then southwest Texas, which kind of dates me a little bit. And I started doing internships in Austin. And like many people, once I got a taste of Austin, I knew that was what I wanted and wasn't going back to Houston. No offense to Houston. It's great. I especially love their restaurants, but I really fell in love with the beauty of Austin and wanted to find a way to support myself and stay here. So I started in politics and met Elizabeth Christian and was able to get an internship for her, and I haven't gone back since.
So you started at ECPR in 1998 with Elizabeth Christian, the namesake of who started the whole organization that you worked with. She was an important mentor in your life early on. What was that like getting started? Because I'd heard that you didn't actually have an office job until you started working there.
That's right, yeah. Well, Elizabeth, people who have mentors, well, I think mentors are so important. I think internships are so important.
Yeah.
Because they can show you what you just can't learn in a classroom. And before that internship, I'd never been in an office. I didn't know how you were supposed to act in a meeting or what to wear. So I learned hard skills, but I learned a lot of soft skills too. And she really took me under her wing. So I was very, very lucky. And I probably did projects that I was not qualified to be doing. So some of the scariest projects are the best ones, though, because you learn a lot. I remember doing a parade down Congress Avenue with elephants. I remember doing big projects at the Capitol. It was all really fun and exciting, and I soaked it all in. And I just feel really lucky to be doing it still today.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about what the early days of public relations were here in Austin and what it was like when you first kind of planted your flag here in the late 90s. How has Austin changed and what did it look like in 1998?
Oh, gosh. Well, Austin has changed and the public relations industry has changed. So I'll start with PR.
Yeah.
So my job when I started was very glamorous. I was in what had been a bathroom and they converted it and stuck a desk in there and had me clip newspapers all day long. So that was what I did. Everybody got a hard newspaper then. But I read everything I clipped, and it was a great way to soak in what the firm did, what the clients did. And, in those days, you would just fax out a lot of press releases. Sometimes I would hand deliver those press releases. And if you could just get your client on the cover of the Austin American-Statesman, your job was done. So the industry has changed a lot. We still value the Statesman a great deal, but people get their information in a ton of ways. Like, we didn't have podcasts then.
No.
I think I had just gotten my first cell phone when I got the internship. So it's changed, obviously. And Austin has changed, obviously, a ton. Just, you take the physical skyline for one thing. but just the types of clients we were working with, I would not have dreamed of all the companies that are here today. I feel like I've grown up with the city in some ways.
Yeah, in some ways you've helped the city grow up too with some of the projects you've worked on. So let's talk about a little bit of that. So there's a lot of different clients that you had in the early years that have led you to some of the things that ECPR does today. Tell me about some of your first or favorite client memories.
Oh gosh, I have so many. And now it's about 25 years later. The firm is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. For me, it's about 25 years because I wasn't there right at the very beginning. But some of them are full circle moments for me now. One of my first projects was with Ballet Austin, and we got to help with the announcement of their artistic director then. And they were doing a big nationwide search, and they ended up picking Stephen Mills, who is someone I admire a great deal. Well, fast forward to now, and Ballet Austin is our client again, and we're helping the ballet celebrate Stephen Mills' 25th anniversary. So, I mean, what an honor and full circle moment. Another client like that is HEB. I've just come off the weekend, working all weekend with the best kind of work with HEB for their Excellence in Education Awards.
Okay.
And that was so full circle because I remember working on those awards 20 years ago when I was pregnant with my twins. And now I'm working on it again, and those twins are freshmen in college, and HEB is still celebrating educators, and we're getting to help tell their stories. So that's the coolest thing. So in some ways, things have changed a ton, but in some ways, we're doing what we've always done, which is tell amazing stories for our clients, but just the way we're telling them has changed greatly.
So what's the craziest story you could tell about Austin changing over the last 25 years?
Oh, boy. Crazy. Define crazy
unexpected.
For me.
What's
Adam.
unexpected?
Unexpected.
I think we've had a lot of unexpected moments in Austin.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, I'll say Austin FC is completely unexpected.
That's right.
That was crazy. We had a group of people come to us and say, sign all these non-disclosure forms, and we're going to tell you the craziest thing. How would you like professional sports in Austin, Major League sports? And we were like, of course. And they said, well, how would you like it to be soccer? And I am a huge soccer fan. My father had played, two of my two sons played, and but we believed in it, we wanted it, but I don't know at the beginning if we thought it would really happen. There were so many hurdles, and now you go to Q2 Stadium, you see all the supporters, you think, how could we not have this?
Yeah.
But at the time, which this was in 2017, there was just so many hurdles. People in Columbus who didn't want this to happen. There were business interests here who were against this. There were 11 city council votes that had to happen. So that, for me, is probably the craziest thing, that it actually did happen. The group that came together, and it was a phenomenal group, they were able to overcome all of these hurdles so that Austin could get a Major League sports team. And when you compare Austin to other cities in the country and the number of teams that they have, we actually should have more Major League sports teams. Yes. We have the population for it.
I've seen a few programs out there for it. We've seen WNBA, we've seen MLB. So there's definitely some missions forward for this.
Yeah. I think we'll see more. I hope we'll get to be a part of it.
Sooner than later?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. I'm just curious. I think that soccer is interesting because I would not say I was a fan, but now I have season tickets there.
You do?
How can you not? I mean, it's the heartbeat of the city. You go there and you feel an energy and intensity that you don't feel other places in the city.
And do you understand the game now?
A little bit.
Do you know what offsides is?
Yeah. That might be where I draw the line. I know that I still enjoy going to a 0-0 match, and I don't call it a game, I call it a match. So, I mean, there's progress.
Yeah.
But this is our first year having season tickets, but I think we have you and MLS to ATX to thank for that. I'm going all over the place, but I think this is a really interesting topic because I'm sure there's a lot of opposition, and I'm sure there's still a lot of opposition for other Major League programs here as well. How do you go about the idea of publicly helping your clients as well as privately or publicly lobbying the politicians and the people that it takes to really make something like this happen? Because that's got to be a concerted effort, and it's probably more than just a one-by-one meeting. How do you go about really building momentum for something like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, you used an important word, and you said the word lobby. So we never lobby. Okay. We're not lobbyists. So we educate. And so that's a really important thing that we do. Mm-hmm. And we did do one-by-one with the client. I ate a lot of tacos and had a lot of coffee in the span of that few years, but we used every tool that we had. We built a coalition. We knew this had to be a ground-up effort, and it started with a secret coffee with one person who, this guy had wanted soccer in our town for a long time. It was a guy named Josh, and it went from that to a coalition of 20,000 people. And we built that up, using digital tools that didn't exist when I first started doing this job. And then it led to a day that will forever stick in my mind, which was the day they launched season tickets and the website crashed, because that was how great the demand was. And I feel for the people who were running that site, but for me, that was a really sweet day.
So it stayed, right? They're still selling out every single game, 20,000 people. There's this Oak Collective wait list as well. So that demand is continued. If anything, it's multiplied.
It has, and that makes me really happy, but what makes me even more happy is, part of our job as the PR firm is to help convey whatever the business owner, the organization is promising to the community. Because in some ways, this was a sports team, but it was a real estate development because they wanted the land where Q2 Stadium is now. And at that time, I remember I went out there and there was nothing there. There were shopping carts and tires and drug paraphernalia. But once it became known as the place that this sports team wanted, then all of a sudden everyone wanted that land, and it was so precious. So there were trade-offs, as there were trade-offs with everything. And so the team made a lot of promises. And what makes me the most proud today is that they've kept up with those promises. We don't work with the team or the club on communications anymore. We turned that over to them after the community engagement portion was over. We did it for about 2.5 years. We're just supporters. I've got a couple sets of season tickets, one for my company, one for my family. But it's great to see those promises kept. Yeah. And it's great to see the diversity in the stadium. They said this will be a club for all of Austin. Northeast, Southwest, there will be ticket prices for everyone. And I think they've stayed true to their word.
I think so. I think their prices are very affordable for what you get. And the experience is second to none going in there, and the constant drumming and the constant songs. And there's no replicating that. I don't think a lot of other MLS teams, I've watched a few on TV, do that all game or all match long. I haven't seen that in every game.
There are some cities that do it really well. Yeah. I remember when we were looking at this, the Chamber of Commerce, I think we went to Minnesota, and then I went with a client that was looking to sponsor maybe St. David's Healthcare, and they're still the healthcare sponsor. We went to Portland, and they had great supporter groups, and I thought, will we be able to pull this off in Austin? And I underestimated Austin and the supporter culture here, because we do it better now. Yeah,
so I want to change subjects a little bit because I want to make sure we focus past, present, future, and we've skipped a lot of the past. I want to bring this back to you a little bit and go to a few facts and things I think our listeners would find interesting. You told me that you're a first-generation college student. You're raised by immigrant parents. You mentioned your father liked to play soccer as well.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what that journey was like for you being first generation at college, and how your parents raised you and how this all came together for you.
Sure. Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in Alief, which, Alief is a community where I think more languages are spoken in Alief than in any community across the state, just extremely diverse. I didn't really think anything of it growing up there because that was just where I'd always lived. I went K through 12 in Alief public schools. My father was from Germany. He was a chef and moved here speaking no English, and he learned it just in the kitchens of really big hotels and watching TV shows. And my mom came from Toronto, from Canada, to be a nurse and came for the warm weather. And so they met here and kind of built a life. And they both had technical skills, but neither had been to college. And it was never a question that I would go, but I also look back and think it's kind of a miracle that I got there, because they had no idea how it was done. And while I loved my high school, it was huge. It was 4,000 students. So I didn't get help from a counselor or any of that. I only applied to one school, Southwest Texas, because I'd been there. I liked the outlet mall. I thought it was pretty. And so there I went. And so I'm glad it turned out okay. But I just didn't have a lot of guidance because my parents didn't know that world at all. Didn't apply for any scholarships because no one said, hey, you should apply for some scholarships. So how I got there and how we paid for it, it kind of blows my mind. I look back now and think, maybe I should have applied for UT too. That was just up the road. It's a great school. I don't even know if I knew that it was there. So now when I see kids, I do a lot of work too with Austin ISD, and I think college visits for kids are so important, but that's another story. So anyway, yeah, my parents, great parents, worked really hard. They taught me a lot about working hard. Both of them had jobs that were not typical 9-to-5 jobs, right? So a lot of time my brother and I were home alone, especially once my parents got divorced. So you grew up really fast then. And work was very important. I started working when I was 15, and my first job was at the Foot Locker because you got free shoes, and that was cool. And I haven't stopped working since. And I loved going to Texas State. That was a great school, and I think they have a really high quality mass communication department. I still do.
Yeah.
We hire a lot of people from there. We get a lot of interns from that school. So I'm really proud of being a Bobcat, and that was a terrific experience.
Texas State is really impressive, and I feel like they continue to fly under the radar, but the amount of students enrolled there and the growth they've had, the programs that they've created, even in the last decade, have really flown under the radar.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? Because Texas State is a huge program in the state.
I think they're getting more and more notoriety, particularly, well, you told me you've got a 16-year-old, so you'll be here very soon.
Yeah.
I've got twins who are freshmen. As it gets increasingly difficult to get into UT or A&M, I think Texas State is becoming a really terrific option for a lot of kids looking to go to college.
Yeah.
And they're doing more research. I think they've got maybe a couple PhD programs, and it's a terrific location. You know, my son chose to go to Texas Tech, and sometimes I think, boy, I wish he would have looked at Texas State. It's a lot closer.
Yeah, 8 hours away versus 45 minutes.
Exactly.
And they have a football program that's Division I, which is a big deal.
Really well. Yeah, that's very different from when I was there.
Yeah, I think UT might be scared to play them occasionally. They don't anymore, but it would be interesting.
They're a strong program. But, you know, when I was there, I didn't think, I'm setting out to own a business, and I have this strong passion for public relations. I was just there because that's what you do. You go to college, and then I guess I'll get a job because I have to pay the bills. I really had hoped I might go to law school, but it just wasn't an option because the pressure was on to start paying back loans, and I needed a paycheck. I feel like I had luck and timing on my side at so many steps. Meeting Elizabeth, having a friend who said, oh, you should look at public relations. You know, you like talking. You'd be good at that major. And kind of the dominoes fell for me.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely found your life's work early in doing so. So you actually started out through a political campaign?
I did, yeah. We talked, although my parents weren't from this country, they were always very interested in current events and politics. So we always had the news on at home. Sunday dinners, we always watched 60 Minutes. And so I was always interested in politics. And so that was my minor in college, and I thought I'd like to work on campaigns. But my first campaign was in 98, and it was a losing campaign. And that's a tough way to get a start, but it was a great lesson. And it made me see that politics can be kind of an unstable career.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So I was marrying a teacher. I knew I was going to marry a teacher after college. And I thought, someone might want to make some more money. You can appreciate that as a financial advisor.
I can, yes.
And so I thought, maybe I'll try public relations. And I met Elizabeth Christian and her husband, Bruce Todd, on that campaign. And so that was one of those serendipitous moments.
So Bruce Todd, former mayor of Austin in the 90s, is that right?
He was. He held many positions. He's someone who did so much for this city. He was mayor. I think he served as a county commissioner. You know, he doesn't get enough credit. He was instrumental in the airport that we all know and love now. He started workforce programs. He just did a whole lot in the 90s, but just one of the sweetest, smartest men you would ever know.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that if you had more time, if Bruce was still around, you would have asked him more questions.
Oh, yes. He's just great. So we lost Bruce. You know, he had a certain kind of dementia near the end of his life, and we lost him on Christmas Day in 2021. And he was, you know, he would office at our office.
Okay.
And he always made the time to go around and say hello to everybody in the office.
It's amazing.
But I didn't ask him enough substantive questions. Because you know how it is? You think people will be around forever. And it wasn't the case. But I was really lucky to have him in my life for 20 years.
That's amazing. So you had him as a mentor to you, and also Elizabeth Christian.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Elizabeth Christian. I've run into her a few times around town, seen her years ago. What was her career like, and what was that like coming into a firm where she had started, but not that long before you joined, What was that like learning from her, and where did she get her start?
Oh my gosh, no better teacher than Elizabeth. So when I started, actually, there were 3 partners. Okay. And so that was an interesting experience just to see the dynamics of a partnership. Do you have partners?
I do now. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you know what that's like. It can be great because being a CEO can be lonely, but I also got to see the challenges. But there were 3 strong women who were the partners, and I enjoyed working with all of them. But as time went on, Elizabeth decided she wanted to run it by herself, and I got to work closely with her. But boy, she is so smart. I mean, right now she's retired, and you'd think she might just want to garden, but she's in France right now because she wants to be fluent in French, and she is.
Love it.
Right?
Love
That's
it.
relaxing to her. But just so many talents, and extremely tenacious. I think that's where I learned you just don't take no for an answer from Elizabeth, whether it's, trying to get a win for your client or trying to accomplish something for the city. And she had a deep, deep love of Austin. I think she was a 5th or 6th generation Austinite. So she had a perspective on Austin that a lot of people don't have. And talk about a love for politics. I mean, that ran through her veins. Her father was a man that many people here know, George Christian.
Okay.
And he was the press secretary to then President Lyndon B. Johnson. So she had some amazing stories of a childhood with time in the White House and just...
What a connection.
She's a very interesting person to spend time with.
I'm looking at some lessons learned that you'd written, 10 lessons, and I wanted to pull them out here because I think this is a good fit for where we're talking. Number 1 was don't bring your problems to the table, bring solutions.
Yes.
Which is exactly what we say here on the podcast. You can criticize Austin all you want, but where's the solution? Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a lot of criticism of the city and not a lot of promised solutions to what we see. So I love that. You also want to know your audience when you're communicating. Ask for what you want, observe others' behavior, be a chameleon. I want to hear a little bit more about that because I think that's a really interesting lesson.
Be a chameleon?
Yeah, observe others' behavior and be a chameleon.
Yeah, I mean, I think reading the room is just key to success.
Yeah.
Read the room, read others' responses to you. That's just key to life, not just business. I mean, I think it is so important to public relations, but if I'm sitting here speaking to you and you're falling asleep, I know it's time for me to shut up. I mean, that's a very small thing, but it comes into play with children, with all kinds of people.
Yeah.
And if I can go back to one other one, you said,
Sure.
Come to the table with solutions, not just problems.
Yeah.
I do think it's really easy just to admire the problem. And that is one of the things I love so much about our current mayor. I admire Mayor Watson so much, and I think he is so solution-oriented, which is one of the reasons he's getting so much done for our city.
Making huge waves right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's wonderful. But I hope when people who work for me come to me, they know the understanding is don't just come with the problem, come with a suggested solution. That's also a time saver. It gives us somewhere to start.
Love it. A couple others you have were demonstrate empathy, understanding, and awareness of others' emotions, exude confidence in your abilities and decisions. When faced with a request or opportunity, if your answer isn't an enthusiastic yes, your reply should be no. I probably need to take that advice. That's a great piece.
That's a tough one for me. And I see why it would be for you too, because you're in client services. And there's a reason we're in client services, and that's probably because we're pleasers.
Sure.
And telling someone no is hard because you're going to disappoint someone. But if you're not an enthusiastic yes, so here's what I do. I'll say yes, and then I'll put it on the calendar for a long time away. And I don't know if I think that day will never arrive, but it always does.
Uh-huh.
And it's not as if my enthusiasm grows in that 2-month time span or whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
So it really is better because, maybe you say no, and someone else would love to do that in your place. They might be really enthusiastic. So I've had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've learned that too a little bit, but I don't think I've quite mastered it. Maybe.
Okay, I'll follow up with you on that. Maybe we can each work on that.
Set an alert for 6 months from now. You have 3 more here. Be open to anything. No task is too big or too small. Be clear and concise. And then the last one: pause, listen, give others room to talk. These are great lessons, regardless of whether it's for PR or life or anything else. I love this. Are there any others that you want to talk about? Anything else that stood out?
Oh, if I can just see that paper, sure. I would just go back to it. I think listening is really important, and that one can be tough for me. I think it can be tough, when you're the boss in your office. You think your place is to speak, but really if we're doing a good job as the boss, we've surrounded ourselves with people who are smarter than us. Mm-hmm. At least in some way or another. We haven't done a good job of building a team. So if I'm not listening to what they have to say, I'm not getting the most out of them. So I think listening is so important. And then pausing too. Sometimes we can get moving so quickly. That's when you miss things, and mistakes get made. And then no task is too big or too small. Boy, I had an amazing opportunity last night. Are you familiar with Admiral McRaven?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So he spoke at this HEB dinner that I mentioned, and he spoke about leadership. And that was one of the lessons he talked about. Just no matter what position of leadership you're in, you need to be willing to do any task. And I fully believe that. If I ever get to a place in this job or any job where I think I go in and say, oh, I'm above that job, then I shouldn't be doing the job anymore. That's what I think. And I wouldn't ask someone on my team to do something that I wouldn't do too. I think that's important.
That makes a lot of sense. So now that you're celebrating ECPR Texas 30th anniversary, what does this milestone mean to you, and what does it mean to the company to get to 30 years?
Boy, I think it's such a big deal. And it means more to me now, obviously, that I'm in the seat than when I was an employee. Obviously, I've always taken such immense pride in the work we do and the clients that we serve. But now that I'm in this seat as the owner, I understand that it's maybe a little more tenuous. I know how hard it is to be a small business owner.
Yeah.
You know, especially as there are these economic uncertainties in the world. I don't take it for granted how special it is to have some bit of success and get to be an employer of 25 people in a very special city like Austin. And so every day I think I'm very lucky, but I also think keep working because that could change. I don't take it for granted. So the fact that we have 30 years behind us is awesome. It's a great foundation, but that doesn't mean we're guaranteed 30 more years.
Absolutely. And the city constantly changes, and you have to continue to kind of evolve with it. Because, I mean, the city's different today than it was even pre-COVID to where it was in 2010. It's constantly changing, and I'm sure the PR landscape is also changing.
It is. Yeah, it is greatly. You know, one of the biggest changes, and this happens so quickly, for a long time, I felt like I was the kid in the room and I was playing grown up. You know, it's a bit of that imposter syndrome.
Sure.
I thought, I'm going to try and buy clothes that look like my boss, and then people will take me seriously if I look like her. And I was just trying to get a seat at the table. And then all of a sudden I woke up one day and I looked around, and I was the oldest person in the room. And I'm literally the oldest person at my firm. And I feel like that happened overnight. I don't know how it happened, but there's beauty with that too.
Yeah.
Because, you know, one of the things we do at our firm is we're so into just building connections and relationships. Sure, because it's good for business, but also it just makes what we do so much more fun and gratifying. So now I can sit at a table or walk into a room and it's friends. It's people who I've worked with for decades. And so when I compare walking into a room 25 years ago, and it was really scary and intimidating, and I felt like I knew who these people were, but I didn't really know them. And now I walk in and these are people who are friends and peers. That's a huge difference, and that's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, and part of that is putting in your time in the city too, and really working with different coalitions and groups and volunteering. I feel like that's a result of your hard work. Yeah,
it has to be intentional. You know, it's kind of like you get what you give.
Absolutely. So I want to hear a little bit about some of your favorite stories, some of your favorite things that you've done over the years. So I know that you were at the LBJ Presidential Museum Library, and you had the role of getting to kind of guide the events of the Civil Rights Summit. I remember when that happened, and I was really disappointed. I think I joined the lottery. I couldn't get tickets. So I know it was very limited in the crowd that could be there, but all the living presidents were there at the time. Tell us a little bit about what that experience was like and what that was like for you as well as for the city and what really happened those days.
I mean, first of all, to have the LBJ Library here in Austin, for anyone who hasn't been, that's such a treasure that we have. So if you haven't gone, please go. And the person who leads that foundation, his name is Mark Updegrove, and he's someone I admire a great deal. He's a historian and an author, and he put that whole Civil Rights Summit together. So it was an amazing program, and the fact that he asked us to come in and help with communications and media was a really big honor. And we were brought in very late. So it was exciting and exhilarating, but it was daunting too.
I'm sure.
So sometimes that happens with a firm like mine. Sometimes we're brought in months and months in advance, and sometimes we're an afterthought. And that's okay. We can work really quickly. So that was the case there. And we were all excited, but it was one of those all hands on deck times. Our firm was a lot smaller then. I think maybe we only had about a dozen people, but every single one of us had a part to play on this. Elizabeth got to interview President Jimmy Carter at that. So That was really cool. My job was not as glamorous, but it was still very important. I think I probably got to check in media at a desk, but I have one image that stands out in my mind. I was leading a long line of press corps across the street to cover one of the speeches by one of the presidents. It might have been President Obama's speech. He was in office at that time. And I looked back, and it was just reporters as far as the eye could see. And that was just really moving, because our job as PR people is to get the press to show up. So to have that many of them in one space, I was like, this is what my dreams are made of. But that was fun. And we got to hear a lot of just really moving speeches, because it was the anniversary of the passing of the Civil Rights Act. Something we kind of take for granted, which we shouldn't, but LBJ passed that. It had been 100 years ago at that time. So we got to revisit that and hear about it. So it was pretty substantive, in addition to being just a very cool event.
Great. So I know you had that event, and then you also being tied to Lady Bird Johnson's funeral on a sadder note, but she was an incredible woman, wasn't she? She lived decades longer than LBJ, and really her and the Robb family and the people that really were here in Austin continue to have an impact, and they still do today in the Austin area. But tell me a little bit about Lady Bird and what that experience was like for you.
So that was one of those things. I was still young and coming up in the firm, and that was a connection through Elizabeth and her family to the Johnson family. And we knew it was quite an honor when Mrs. Johnson was close to the end of her life, that it was going to be a big media event. And they had many days of events to honor her. And the family was happy to have media there, but they knew it had to be handled carefully. So they asked our firm to handle that media. And when someone passes away, it's coming, but you don't know when. So I remember we all had black suit jackets hanging on the back of our door, just waiting to get the call, which is kind of a weird thing. So we got the call, and I remember it was in the middle of the summer, and it was so hot. And of course, Mrs. Johnson is known for the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center. So there, of course, was an event there and at the library. And I just remember, at one point, I think I was laying on the pavement at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center with a photographer, because they had to get the perfect shot, but the family didn't want to see a bunch of media. So that I remember at that moment thinking, this has got to be one of the weirdest moments of my career. I recognized the specialness of it, but also it was just really weird. I was in a suit and sweating, and just there were hundreds of people there, but they got the photo, and it was a really cool photo. And then after it was all over, I remember Mrs. Johnson's daughter Lucy invited all of us to her friend's house to personally thank us for this, because that was obviously, it was her mother's passing. We thought of it as our work, but this is her mother. And that was so nice. She didn't have to do that. And she gave us all these little plaques. And it was a saying of her family's, and they said "can do." And that was something her father had said. And so that's now become a core value of our firm, which is "can do." And so we all have these little plaques on our desks.
It's amazing.
From that. It was really cool.
I love that tradition has kind of continued for your own firm. Mm-hmm. You also mentioned some things in the intro about elephant parades and circuses, and it sounds like you've gone the extra mile a few times to really kind of go above and beyond for your clients. What are these stories about circuses and elephants?
It was so weird. There was a span of about 2 or 3 years where it seemed like we had a specialty in doing press for circuses. I think that's a little passé. I don't think circuses really come to Austin anymore.
Yeah, no.
But for a while they did, and it was Barnum and Bailey, and then it was also Cirque du Soleil, which was amazing. I got to go to the headquarters of Cirque du Soleil in Canada, which, having family that's Canadian, and just Cirque du Soleil being the art form that it is, that was fantastic. Have you ever been to a Cirque show?
Yeah, in Vegas. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I had too, and so to go to their headquarters was fantastic. They make all their own costumes and even dye the fabric, and so I got this behind the scenes look. And then I got to work with them when the show was here, and they're much bigger than they are now. They erected a huge tent, and it ended up with me becoming friendly with the contortionist and driving her around to interviews. And you realize you just see these people on the stage doing doing their thing, but they're real people. You get to hear about their lives, so that was a lot of fun. But then also, back then, Barnum and Bailey still had all the animals and elephants, and you kind of think of Barnum and Bailey as like they were the original like PR people, the spinsters a little bit.
P.T. Barnum.
Yeah.
He's a legend.
And so they wanted like a lot of pizzazz, and they were like, well, how about this? We should do a parade up to the Capitol. Even then we had that can-do spirit. So we were like, yeah, we'll make that happen. And I don't know what made us say yes, but we did.
Okay.
And apparently there are a lot of city permits you need to get
to
do an elephant parade on Congress Avenue. And I don't think we had all those city permits because the elephants were coming down the street, and we said the elephants were going to paint and create some art with their trunks. I mean, this is probably very wrong. I shouldn't be saying this. It was a long time ago. There's a statute of limitations.
It was okay. Yeah,
it was a long time ago. Anyway, we didn't get in trouble. It happened. We got a ton of media coverage. People were very happy. There were some good lessons there about city permitting that I have taken with me.
I'm sure. Yeah, I don't think it's easy to pull off an event in Austin. I think it takes some work.
It just takes a lot of planning. You have to start early.
Yeah. Well, we're, Kristin, this journey's been already so insightful. We're going to take a quick pause for our message from our sponsor. When we come back, we'll dig into Austin's future and the lessons you're carrying forward.
In every episode of Austin Eras, we explore the layers of Austin's history, its vibrant present, and its exciting future. Just like our city, your financial journey is a rich tapestry, woven with moments that define you. At Collective Advisors, led by Adam Flagg, Managing Partner, Senior Wealth Advisor, and Certified Financial Planner Professional, your financial story is in skilled hands. We understand that your financial needs are as unique as Austin's skyline. And much like the city's history, innovation is at the heart of what we do. Whether it's investment management, retirement planning, or navigating life's transitions, Adam and his team leverage a collective of dependable professionals to support your financial journey. Their goal is to help you build, maintain, and enjoy financial security. To start crafting your financial legacy with a team that's as dynamic and innovative as Austin itself, visit collectiveadvisors.com or call 512-467-1923.
Welcome back to the Austin Eras podcast. I'm your host, Adam Flagg, and I'm joined by the CEO of ECPR Texas, Kristin Marcum. Thank you again for joining our show. We have a few more things to talk about. We're going to talk about the future of Austin. I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing currently. I know we talked about mentorship earlier. You're a mentor. I know you are. I know you mentor other people, and you do a really great job even within your own firm. But how do you spot or nurture the next generation of Austin leaders? I'm setting you up a little bit because I know that you're also on other chamber. You're on the Austin Chamber of Commerce Board. You're on the Austin Ed Fund. So you're already involved a lot in kind of the future of Austin. Tell us a little bit about your involvement there, as well as, again, the next generation of Austin.
Sure. Well, some of it's formal and some of it's really informal. When I came to Austin, I feel like Austin just opened its arms wide for me. And I love that about the city. And even as it grows, I think it still has that quality. Austin in some ways still feels like a small town. If you want to get involved, you can do that. So I am on a few boards, and they've got young leaders, affinity groups, and I like to be involved in those. And if any of those people want to reach out to me and meet with me, or I have a mentor through one of those right now, I'm happy to do that. But also informally. I was at a meeting recently, and someone there, she said, "Can I follow you outside? I want to talk to you." And she said something about my career and said, "Can we go have lunch?" And I was just so impressed that she did that. And I'm always happy to do that. So, I do it in formal and in informal ways. But my first priority are always going to be the people that work at ECPR. Because as I said, they are all younger than me, but they're just so talented and they have such bright futures. And I see how much they give at the firm and to our community. I mean, they're community leaders in their own right.
For sure.
So if I can help mentor them and help them learn from some of the mistakes I've made along the way, that's really important to me.
That's wonderful. So tell me a little bit more about even that next generation. You mentioned a little bit about high school interns.
Yeah. So the next generation, I think we can learn a lot from younger people, and younger people give me a lot of hope. I mean, sometimes with the way the world is, you can get bogged down by news. You wake up in the morning, you open your phone to the news, and you think, what happened last night?
Yeah.
And you can you can feel a little hopeless, but young people do give me hope. I've got my own children who give me a ton of hope. My daughter's a political science major at the University of Michigan, and she puts things in perspective for me in a big way. But also, if you go even younger, high schoolers. And I'm just amazed that high schoolers are doing internships these days. I'm on the board of the Austin Ed Fund for Austin ISD, and in partnership with the Austin Chamber, they're offering 100 high school students internships this summer. And I don't know what you did in high school, but it was not an internship for me. I don't know, maybe you were more advanced than me.
I did do an internship with the Iowa Cubs, if you're asking. I worked in the front office of the AAA baseball team.
And look at you now.
Yeah, but no, I'm not doing any of that, am I? But I think part of the internship fun is learning what it's like to sit down and be in a workplace.
Yeah.
And also learn what you'd want to do or what you wouldn't want to do.
Absolutely. Yes. It's great for just showing what path might be right and what wouldn't. It's funny. We were at this event this weekend honoring teachers, and I looked over at my coworker and I said, "Oh, I wish I could be a teacher." And he said, "Well, you are." And I was like, "Oh, that was just so meaningful to me." And then right after that, I saw this person from the chamber, and I said, "We're excited about having our one high school intern this summer." And he said, "Oh no, I've got great news. You're getting 3 high school interns this summer. So maybe I will be a teacher." But if anybody listening is interested, I know the Chamber and the Austin Ed Fund are still looking for companies to offer internships. I think last I heard they had about 400 high school students who wanted interns. So the interest is there, and it's great. So I hate that they have to turn away so many students.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, please contact the Austin Chamber. You can just go to their website. But we're excited about that. We'll have them for about 6 weeks, and hopefully we can either show them they love PR or digital media, or just teach them how to act in an office.
I think it'll be a wonderful experience for them, and I'm sure they'll have a good experience at ECPR, just because I think you have a great group of talented younger people at your firm. I mean, there are a lot of people under 30 at your firm working hard in their profession. I think that's amazing. You've spoken about being the kind of employer who impacts 25 families. You have 25 employees. What does responsible leadership mean to you right now?
25 is an interesting number for a small business because it's small enough that I can know all of them. I know a little something about all of them, which really allows me to have empathy for all of them. I know this person has a dog and that dog was sick. I know this person is getting married. And so when I think about growth, that's something I think about. How big do I want to get? Because I really enjoy knowing them all.
Yeah.
And I do take being an employer really seriously because, as I said, neither of my parents were business owners. They worked for people. And I saw at home the difference between when they worked for someone great or when they had a manager that was not that great. And that trickle-down effect was felt even by the kids in the house. So I know I can make a difference, not just for those 25 employees, but for their families, when it comes to how flexible we are with hours. Can they pick up their kid at school, or the type of health insurance we offer? That's, it's important to me that I pay for my employees' health insurance. That I think health insurance should be something they all have. And so it's important to me that we have enough business success so that we can treat our employees well.
I love it. I mean, you are the creator of the culture. You're the keeper of the culture for your firm, and I think that's amazing.
No pressure, but I had some time to think about it.
But you have strong opinions about it too, right?
I do, yeah.
And I think that's important that it permeates throughout the firm and people see that. So I want to talk a little bit more about PR before we move ahead, which is what's something people still misunderstand about what public relations actually is. I called it lobbying earlier when we were talking about, Austin FC, but I mean, what do you think people think PR is versus what it is?
That is such a good question, Adam. My grandmother, up until the time she died, thought I was on the news. People just a lot of times don't understand PR. I think, one, they don't understand how strategic it is and how difficult it is. And then now I think people don't understand how it's evolved and what it includes. So I mentioned early on it was just, sending out press releases. Well, now, for example, our firm, sure, we still do that, but we also do full video production. We have a suite of digital capabilities, and that's not just your Instagram page, right? It's very strategic, and it's a whole lot more than that. We do event production, so it's telling your story, it's creating a movement, but it can also be being by your side in a time of crisis. You know, we have a client with hospitals in El Paso. When there was an act of mass violence, we had a team out there immediately to help manage the response to that and work with all the media. So it's not just good news times two. I think people also misunderstand, and they go back to that P.T. Barnum and think it's just spinning the news. Like if a client wants something spun or the truth not told, like we're not the firm for that.
Okay.
We are the firm to help you tell the truth in the best possible way, but we're not going to be the spinners for you.
Yeah, that's for the TV shows, I guess, that dramatize.
That's on TV.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about your experience with Austin. Just what's your favorite under the radar place to take guests to when they visit?
Oh, I don't know how under the radar it is, but we happen to have guests coming this weekend, and we are taking them to Fonda San Miguel. It's an oldie, but a goodie, and I love the atmosphere, and I love the margaritas, and I just think you can't go wrong there.
So interior Mexican in a very beautifully lit and decorated restaurant in Central Austin, for those that don't know.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
And the service is great. I mean, the people who work there have worked there for so many years. It's a wonderful spot. And then we are taking them to the Broken Spoke to give them quintessential Texas.
I love it. So you put on your boots. You guys are going to go dancing? You going to really do this?
Well, we'll go to the Broken Spoke.
Okay.
Not everyone in my house is a good dancer, but we'll go there and watch other people dance.
I don't either, so I would watch as well. So good. And then Q2 Stadium, obviously you had a part in Austin FC and Q2. You said you're a season ticket holder.
Yeah.
Tell us some of your favorite hacks, your favorite things about going to an Austin FC game that maybe the average person doesn't know.
Oh my gosh. Well, this sounds so basic, but so we've got one of my sets of tickets. They're club tickets. We're very fortunate. People sometimes say, because you worked on this campaign, I guess you got free tickets. And we did not get free tickets, but we got an early choice. So we've got great tickets right behind the players, and it's in a club, so we get the club food. But I still love getting those double days. I still love getting double days.
Pizza rolls?
Yes.
All right.
So much. So that's one hack, I guess. I love that. I still love going to the store. So here's an interesting little story. I have heard that when they were planning that stadium, that store was not supposed to be as big as it is. And I love going in there to just see it now because it's 2 stories.
Yeah, it's so
I think
big.
it was just supposed to be 1 story. And if you look at how big it is, I mean, can you imagine if that was just 1 story? So I love going in there and seeing everybody buying all the merch. And I, of course, have to buy something myself.
So you're a great supporter of it. They're in their 5th season now, I believe. Is that right? 5th or 6th?
I'm not sure.
I'd have to fact check that.
I think they started during COVID, right? So
yeah,
that would be
yeah.
right. I think they started in 20.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you've been going this whole time? Mm-hmm. What's been your experience? How has the experience changed, or how have the players changed, or what's that look like from 2020 to now?
I mean, the players all, they've had some changes. We've seen the coach change.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of Josh Wolf, but
Sure.
I know a lot of people here thought he had to change. I love that our goalie hasn't changed. I'm just a huge fan of what Stuver's done in our community and how he stepped up. I don't know him personally, but just watching from afar, he seems like such a stand-up person. So that hasn't changed. I love the consistency of it. I mean, I don't think I've seen a ton of changes. It's always a great experience, whether I go with friends or clients or my kids. I've had my kids' birthday parties there. It's just, I love that it's something you can count on being, whether we lose or there's a draw, you leave smiling and you just can't help it.
Every time. You're right. No one leaves that stadium unhappy, unless you're just really into whether they win or lose. So you're currently board chair at the United Way for Greater Austin.
Yes.
Thank you for your service to that group. What has that work taught you about inclusive philanthropy?
Well, United Way has taught me over many years that anyone can be a philanthropist. I started giving to United Way because one of my clients, Texas Mutual, through my friend Jeremiah, who I know
we
is
know
a friend of
Jeremiah
yours
Bentley.
too,
Yeah,
got me involved through something called the Young Leader Society. I aged out of that, but I stayed involved with United Way. And I mean, when I first started giving to them, I didn't have a lot to give. But as my career grew, my affinity for United Way grew because my view of Austin has also grown. I see what a great life my kids have been able to have here. But through United Way, my eyes have been open to see that not all kids have had that experience in Austin. I see that not all kids are ready for school when they go to kindergarten. And while I love Austin, I am in love with Austin, I would like to see more people have that same Austin experience. And that is what keeps me coming back to United Way again and again. You know, they run something called the 211 Navigation Center. And that is something where people call, I think it's like 1,000 people call every day for help with basic services. You can't pay your rent. You don't know where you're going to get food. I hate that we need it, but we do. And the fact that United Way provides it is awesome. So I'm really proud to chair that board.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that one thing that's come up for me is between your leadership at the United Way, Leadership Austin, the Austin Ed Fund, the Austin Chamber of Commerce that you currently do, let alone everything else that you're probably involved in and things that you now have rolled off. There's certainly been a level of intentionality with your service and being in the room and being in the right places. What's led you there? Because you started out in 1998 clipping newspaper articles and things. Where did that light flip and switch and turn on for you in Austin?
Well, some of it was learned. You know, I certainly had a great role model in Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I saw her do that, and it was just, at our firm, that's just kind of what you do. And I will say the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. It feels good to do good. It's also good for business. That doesn't hurt. Like,
yeah.
Someone I admire a lot is Bobby Jenkins. If you watch TV, I'm sure you've seen him with ABC. And he will say that doing good can be good for business. And it has been. I can look at all the community work I've done, and I've probably gotten new clients through a lot of them just because of the relationships I've built. But if I just went to my office and did that work every day and went home, like, that would not be the rich kind of life that I want. You know, I think it's got to be more than that. And I tell my team that too. Like, a job is really important, but you've got to have more than that to really fill your heart. You know, whether it's a hobby or community work, we all need a little bit more.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the community work. I'd love to say I have a lot of hobbies. I'm working on that. But so that's where the community work really fills my cup.
So let's talk about the next chapter in Austin's life. You've definitely spent some time here. You've done a lot of great things to the business and the community. We have some things we talked about earlier, potentially another sports team, light rail, public projects. What do you see in the next 20 years for Austin?
I think the future of Austin is really bright, and I'm just happy to be a small part of it. I look at all the infrastructure projects that are happening. You mentioned light rail. Light rail will happen. We need this.
We do.
For sure. But also, I'm excited about some of the things that are happening for kids. You know, that tax rate election that passed in the fall to provide care for kids 0 to 3 and after school care. That is so important to kids, but also to working parents, to allow more parents to go back to work. So I'm super pumped about that. United Way is opening this early child care center at what was Pease Elementary, a historic building downtown. So that's going to be a magnet center. Okay. So I'm excited about some things that are happening for kids in the city, because those are seeds that we plant now that are going to make a big difference to our future. So I think some of that is with Mayor Watson's leadership. That's a priority of his. That excites me a lot. I love kids. Those are growth. I'm not one of those people who is anti-growth. I'm excited about the growth. It's good for all of us. So those are just, right now, I just want to know who's coming out on the ACL lineup. So
tomorrow.
Yes.
Well, we're dating it, but you'll know by the time this plays. But I looked. I was on, and I was getting excited. Yeah. There's some big acts.
Do you go?
Oh, I go every year. I started taking my daughter at 6 years old. She loves music, and she's been tagging along with me ever since Paul McCartney played, I think. And we go every year. She's 14 now, so now she's like, can I bring a friend? Can I sneak off and go to this show and not go with you? So
are you weekend 1 or 2?
I like 2.
See?
I'm weird. Most people like 1. I like 2 because I can watch it on Hulu weekend 1, and I can catch if there's an act I want to see, so then I can actually go on weekend 2.
That's so smart.
It's tricky.
I think if you go 1 or 2, you stick with the same one.
Yeah, I think so.
We're weekend 1. I also go with my 14-year-old. We've gone together forever, and he has informed me that this year we will not be hanging out together.
Yeah, so we're in the same spot. Yeah, good for him.
It hurts a little, but I get it.
Yeah, it is. It's a little painful, but as long as we can monitor and supervise them and they're having a good time.
Yes. Yeah.
Zilker's an amazing place. ACL is incredible. Yeah, I think it could be a really great lineup this year. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious. I feel like the last couple of years maybe have just been okay-ish, but not amazing.
A good indicator, I always like to look at the lineup for Lala in Chicago.
Yeah.
And so there are some people there that might come here, and it'd be great if they did.
I love it. So one of the questions we ask a lot of our guests is what's going to keep you here for the next 15 years, next 20 years. I don't think I have to ask you that because you've been here for a while. You've established a great firm. You guys are celebrating 30 years. But what do you envision your future in Austin? What do you think you'll be doing in the future with ECPR or just yourself, your hobbies, and your life?
Boy, I hope I can travel a little in the summer when it's hot. I love everything about Austin except for the hot summers. So,
Understood.
Maybe a little flexibility there would be nice. I'd like to keep doing what I'm doing. I do envision us growing the firm, leaning into more of what we're doing, projects that, make a difference in the community, probably more digital work. That just seems to be where my field is going. But I'm almost an empty nester. I've only got 4 more years, sadly, and then I'll have no kids in my home. So who knows? I'll talk to you in 4 years.
Yeah, we'll both be there.
Yeah.
So as you reflect on 30 years of growth in this city, what's the lesson Kristin Marcum most wants to hear the next generation to hear, or maybe the next Kristin Marcum in Austin? What's the lesson you want them to have?
I would just say Austin will be good to you. Be good to Austin, and you're going to get out of Austin what you put into it.
It's great. Brilliant. Kristin, thank you for showing us what it looks like to lead with humility, courage, and purpose. From cutting newspaper clippings as an intern to shaping the identity of a city, your story is proof that impact is built one decision at a time. To our listeners, whether you've walked the Lady Bird Trail, been inspired by the Civil Rights Summit, or enjoyed a game at Q2 Stadium, you felt Kristin's quiet influence. Share this episode, leave us a review, and keep paying attention to people who are helping Austin grow the right way. Thanks again for tuning into Austin Eras. Kristin Marcum, CEO of ECPR Texas. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Austin Eras, featuring Adam Flagg, is brought to you by Collective Advisors. Collective Advisors offers investment advisory services through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Guests on Austin Eras are not affiliates of CWM LLC, and opinions expressed by guests may not reflect those of CWM LLC. This show is intended for educational and entertainment purposes and is not intended to provide specific legal, tax, or other professional advice. For a comprehensive review of your personal situation, always consult with a qualified professional.